Hi, I'm Joe Giordano, Content Manager at Aftermarketer Club. Today, for our In the Pits Expert Interview series, we're going to be talking about how automotive industry companies can establish a successful social media strategy. Our guest today is Blake Cahill. Blake is president of Banyan Branch, a leading social media agency based in Seattle. Blake has led marketing, sales, branding, product management, customer acquisition, and customer support for a variety of technology, consumer, and telecommunications companies. These include AT&T, Quest, SBC, and ServiceMaster.com. We want to welcome Blake by starting off with this question. How can automotive industry companies establish a successful social media strategy?
Joe, first, thanks for having me in the pit, as you say, in your aftermarket series here. I think that the main thing to think about, is that think about what consumers are passionate about. And so this shouldn't be necessarily that difficult for auto companies because, many consumers are quite passionate about, the investment they make in a car. So connecting with people, in this arena, a lot of people are already raising their hands and want to talk about it. And that's why you see a lot of the larger, more established brands, GM, Ford, Mercedes, Jaguar, they're all, involved in social because, consumers who have purchased their cars are out there talking about it. So, it's good to be strategic in that you don't just want to like show up and kind of not have a plan. But the consumers are out there and they're talking, and as long as you're not trying to sell something every time you interact, you're trying to add value, show behind the scenes, give them tips and tricks. That's how you can be very successful.
Good points. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see companies making when trying to establish a social media strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things. One, I mentioned before, trying to sell on every interaction. People, don't want to interact with your brand to hear a commercial every time they, mention you. And I think the other point, you need to add value to the conversation and value to why they're raising their hands and are interested in your brand. So I think the second thing is not being prepared. So before showing up and establishing your presence on any of these channels, have a plan, be prepared, be ready to invest against it, have it staffed, develop unique content that people are going to want to engage with, you know, or don't show up at all. So I guess that'd be my biggest advice: is that people tend to underestimate how passionate consumers are, and that this actually becomes a much bigger thing than they originally envisioned. So that would be what I would say are some of the mistakes people make, is like lack of preparedness.
Okay, okay. One of the things we're noticing that more and more automotive industry companies are having Facebook and Twitter profiles. What are some things that companies can do so they can stand out from the competition?
Yeah, I mean it's a battle, for the auto industry offline, never mind online. So, yes, like I said, people are passionate about cars, but the same way automotive companies, need to differentiate their brand or their product, from the whole manufacturing process to color to the engines to the bells and whistles they put inside. The same thing needs to resonate, I think, for people online. And a lot of that is around creating compelling and unique experiences, and reasons that a consumer would want to interact with that brand over another brand. So I would say it is a battle to stand out. And so I think you really have to think about what your consumers are passionate about, related to that particular car, and develop experiences that are unique for them. And you see Audi does some great work in this space, and I think that Porsche and Jaguar are trying to emulate that. And Ford does a fantastic job. And I think some of the others are still trying to, they're there, but they're not as engaged and not doing as unique as things as those guys.
Hmm. So good examples would be Ford or Audi or those kind of to take a look and see what they're doing is what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, I would say, in my opinion, those are the two leaders,
Hmm.
from where I sit
Hmm.
and what I see happening. I would say every major car brand actually has a presence and is doing some level of engagement or creating experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ford is probably at the forefront in terms of like any new platform that comes out or finding, places where consumers are congregating.
Mm-hmm.
I like to call them like the Starbucks of the auto industry. Starbucks is always, one of the leaders sort of in social and digital. And I would say Ford in some respects is doing the same thing as part of their, you know, brand, their brand reemergence over there.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a great job.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we've noticed is that Facebook's come through with a lot of new features just recently. How can automotive industry companies really utilize some of these new features?
Yeah, what's really interesting is that last year when the Facebook timeline was created,
Mm-hmm.
the Facebook timeline is very visual and it actually works very well for brands that have that are a visual brand, and cars are certainly very visual. People like to see pictures of cars and what's inside a car, what's in an engine. There's bazillion different rims, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
people could look at rims all day. So I think that it lends itself, Facebook now, to a very compelling way to share images, and consumers definitely love images and like to interact with them, almost sometimes more than text. The interesting thing about the Facebook timeline and that sort of new way it's laid out, it also allows a brand to talk about their history. And like that's another thing. If you go on Ford's page and you look at the history,
Mm-hmm.
they go all the way back to Henry Ford, and like every year, kind of in the history of the company, have
Mm-hmm.
populated kind of this whole history of the brand. So it really gives it like some depth, and it's actually quite powerful to like click back and look at those stories. I see my team walking around behind me. I guess I can turn this a little bit. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing that's also, I think, a little bit of a challenge for brands is that now with the timeline and some of the changes they've made, I call it content decays a lot faster than it used to.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for your audience to actually see the image that's being put out or the content, it requires the brand to actually put out more content and or use other forms of paid media to keep that content populated and fresh for a brand.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that is really probably more related to the fact that Facebook was trying to monetize their platform
Mm-hmm.
and get brands to have to spend for paid media dollars. But between sponsored stories, imagery, and the timeline, it's much more visually compelling, I think, for brands and consumers to interact. But again, back to this other thing, don't underestimate, the time, energy, and effort that you have to put into it in order to keep that content fresh and consumers interacting with it.
Okay. And kind of transitioning topics, Facebook and Twitter and those kind of social media sites, they get they get the big spotlight. What are some of the most underused social media sites that Banyan Branch likes to use that could maybe benefit automotive industry companies?
Yeah, I mean, all the conversation doesn't happen just on Facebook and Twitter. Those are the pretty big dominant platforms, but I mean, people still live in forums. There's still small forum groups where people are having conversations, and those shouldn't be overlooked because those are typically like hardcore, passionate individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And so connecting with them, I think is very powerful. There's a new platform called Pinterest, which you may or may not be aware of. It definitely skews much more towards the female demographic. And it was sort of like more around like fashion and things like that. But there's an auto category on there. If you go to my Pinterest page, Blake Cahill, I have a thing for cars that I love. There's an Aston Martin out there, and there's a Porsche. And, I mean, there's certainly ways that brands can leverage Pinterest to connect with folks. And, certainly if you think about it, the female makes the buying decision in a lot of households. And if you think about Pinterest, the number one metric there, it's an image. It's image centric. People post pictures of things they like, almost like to a pin board, and then it gets shared out with friends and brands. And we do a lot of work on there for a number of our brands. We've tied contests. The number one metric is driving website traffic to the main sites.
Mm-hmm.
So, you could put out a bunch of really compelling images of, a new car you have coming out or something that's aftermarket, and some cars that are pimped up a certain way, drive to your website, and you could get leads. So, we're seeing lots of really great results at it generating massive amounts of traffic and kind of in a new demographic for a lot of the brands we work with. So I check out Pinterest. It's very cool.
Okay. And just finishing things up, could you tell us a little bit about Banyan Branch and how people can stay in contact with you on social media?
Yeah, Banyan Branch, we're a full service social and digital agency, and we're helping. We work across lots of different verticals. Done some work for Porsche actually in the past, and work across tech, consumer, healthcare, helping a lot of brands connect with their consumers online and create manage communities and or create really compelling digital experiences for consumers to interact with brands. And so, yeah, you can go to our website. We have a very interesting blog that we update probably 2 to 4 times a week and share tips and tricks for marketers and brands to stay on the cutting edge of what's happening. We offer our perspective, and that's what I would take a look at. We've got lots of great examples of ways we've done some interesting things for some brands on our website as well.
Great. We want to just thank you for joining us today, and be sure to get more expert online marketing tips for automotive industry companies by visiting Aftermarketer Club /blog. Thanks, Blake.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Bye.